All right, so for today's lesson, we're going to be working on 14.2 and review for your test tomorrow on units 12 through 14. Okay, just another reminder that we don't have school this Friday, so I won't be posting anything for Friday. Okay, we're almost done, you guys. All right, 14.2. Yesterday, you guys learned law of sines, so today you're going to learn law of cosines. Okay. Law of cosines basically comes from Pythagorean theorem a little bit. You're going to notice that it looks like Pythagorean theorem is in the problem, and then all of these are just minus 2bc cosine A, and then depending on what you need or you have, you alternate the variables. So the way that I looked at it is if I'm using capital A, then the little a squared is what I have here, and then everything else is sides. So you add these two together squared, and it's minus 2, and then the letters that go here are the same ones on this side, BC, and it's cosine of A. So if I'm wanting to find capital B, then little b is the one that it's equal to. The other two sides are going to be A and C, minus 2, and I use these two again, cosine of that B. And lastly, capital C, that means lowercase c is what it's equal to. Here's the other two sides squared, minus 2 times these same two sides. So it does kind of have a pattern. Okay, now I have this equation memorized. I have law of sines memorized. So again, it's just helpful for you guys to know that you are expected to have this memorized before you get to your calculus class. Okay. The more you can start utilizing and memorizing now, the better, because you're going to have a lot of information to memorize when you get to that point. What I always suggest to my students is when you're using an equation and you're trying to memorize it, write it down with each problem that you use. And hopefully by the time you're done with your homework, you have it memorized. But for me, law of cosines, this is more like a pattern. I always put my capital letter here and then lowercase here, the other two letters minus 2 times those same two letters. All right, so sometimes you're going to be given the triangle with the pieces of information, and sometimes they're just going to simply write it out. So one thing you need to remember, again, you're using law of cosines on triangles that are not 90 degrees, so they're not right triangles. So when you're drawing these out, obviously not to scale, your uppercase letters are always going to represent the angles, and the lowercase letter that corresponds is always going to be opposite or across from that angle. So for capital B here, lowercase b has to be here. Capital C here, lowercase c has to be here. And then I can go ahead and kind of put all of my values that are given to me on my drawing. Now, is this a necessary step? It doesn't have to be if you have the equation memorized, that's fine. But it is asking for you to solve triangle ABC, which means that you have to find every single letter, capital and lowercase. So obviously they already have lowercase a and c, so I need to find lowercase b. And then I need to find capital A and capital C. I highly suggest writing it out like this so that you make sure you answer all of the missing pieces of information. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and use law of cosines. And I know that the angle measurement that I was given was capital B. So you can go back to the last equation if you would like to, or the last page, and look up the equation. But I know that if I'm using capital B here, then this is lowercase b. Here's the other two letters, minus 2 times those same two letters. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and plug in. So I don't know what b squared is. I know that a is 7, c is 5, a is 7, c is 5, and b is 100. And I'm going to verify that I don't have more than one variable here. So if I did have more than one variable, then that means maybe I used the wrong information here. But I like to start with what I have more of. So I like to start with my angle measurement here. All right, so now we're simply going to go ahead and use our calculator, okay? Don't expect you guys to not use a calculator with all this trig stuff, okay? So b squared, 7 squared is 49, 5 squared is 25, 2 times 7 times 5 is going to be 70. Cosine of 100. I'm going to go ahead and add together 49 plus 25. And don't subtract, right, you guys? You have to do order of operations. So we always have to multiply right here, right, before we do anything else. So I'm going to go ahead and plug into my calculator cosine of 100. So I'm plugging in cosine of 100. And on my calculator, I'm getting negative 0.173, blah, blah, blah. Okay, and then I'm going to multiply that by negative 70. Make sure, because I know quite a few of you had some questions on the calculator yesterday. So please make sure, it says to the nearest 3 decimal places. Make sure you guys are actually plugging in along with me in these videos so that you're not messing up on a question because you didn't have the right mode or you didn't know how to plug it into your calculator. That shouldn't be a reason for you to get something incorrect. So make sure you're practicing along at home with these videos and plugging into your calculator as well. All right, and then I'm just going to go ahead and add 74 to my current answer. And I'm going to get 86.155. Remember what I told you about making sure that you keep the answers on your calculator? Because now I'm going to go ahead and square root. So it's always best to use what's actually in your calculator because this is not limited to 0.155. There's a lot more numbers behind there, right? So I'm going to take the square root of my previous answer. And I'm going to get b equals 9.282. 9.282. So let me go ahead and show you again how to use this in your calculator. Or you know what? I can show you on the next problem. Okay. All right. Now, how can I find capital A? And I can plug in 9.282 here if I wanted to as well. How can I find capital A? I'm going to change colors. You can use anything, okay? Now, you could use lowercase b if you'd like, but again, my suggestion for students is, let's say, for example, you did type in something wrong for lowercase b. So if you use 9.282 for my next problem, then now I got 2 answers wrong. So see if you can find capital A by using something in the past. I don't know, capital A or capital C. Is there any way we can use maybe law of signs? Or do we need to do cosines again? There may be no way around it. Let's see. For capital A, I could use law of signs, but I do have to use B. In my opinion, law of signs is much shorter than what I just did here for law of cosines. So I'm going to go ahead and find law of sines. And obviously, I have to compare my angle B because that's the only angle inside that I have. I can only have one variable, right? So it looks like I am going to have to use this 9.282, and I'm going to cross my fingers that I got that correct. So here we go. I'm going to use law of sines. I'm going to say sine of A over 7 equals sine of B, where B is 100, over lowercase b that we just found to be 9.282. We're going to cross multiply, or I could just multiply by 7, right? Let me multiply by 7 here because the goal is to get A by itself. Okay, so I have sine of A equals sine of 100 over 9.282 times 7. So I'm going to go ahead and plug this into my calculator. And at the very end, how am I going to find A? Am I just going to plug this in and that's my answer, or do I have to use the inverse button? Remember again, is capital A degrees? Is it an angle or is it a side length? Because if it's an angle, then I have to use the inverse button. Okay, let's go ahead and figure out what this is as a decimal first. Okay. Maybe it's not letting me exit. Keep this up. I'm going to pull up my prime. All right. So I'm going to type in sine of 100. I personally just like to do everything separate. Again, I'm verifying that up here in the top right-hand corner that I have it in Celsius. There's a little degree symbol there. That's what I want. Okay. I'm typing in sine of 100. I'm hitting enter. Again, you guys should be practicing this with me. It doesn't really matter what you do first. You want to multiply by 7 or divide by 9.28. It doesn't matter. I'm going to go ahead and multiply by 7. Okay, and then I'm going to divide by 9.282. All right, so now I have sine of A equals, what was that? 0.7, 43. And I have to get rid of this sign here. So to find A, which is an angle, I need to plug into my calculator sine inverse, which is not an exponent. We're using the shift button, right, you guys? The arc sign, the A sign. So in order to do that, I'm going to hit shift and my sign. There's a little A in front, which means sine inverse. And then again, I'm not going to type in 0.743 because I want to try to record as many digits as possible. So if I double click this previous solution here, it'll pop up in my answer. And if you guys are using yours on a phone, you just double tap it with your finger. Another thing you can do is you could hit shift and the plus sign. See how it says A and S? That takes your last answer. All right. I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. Remember, A is an angle, capital A is an angle, and it looks like, again, rounded to 3 decimal places, we are getting 47.961. And I got to make sure I put that Celsius on it. I'm going to fill it in here, 47.961. Now, for angle C, what is the easiest, fastest way to find angle C? Well, if in any triangle, all 3 angles add up to what? All 3 angles add up to 180. So the fastest way to find angle C is by using old material. Again, this is all about saving time. If you guys want to do law of cosines 3 times for each question, have at it, but it's going to be very tedious and extremely long to get through. Okay, so try to think about it. To me, law of sines and obviously knowing that they add up to 180 is definitely going to be much quicker. So all the angles add up to 180. Again, I can go ahead and use my calculator. I'm going to type in 100 plus 47. Actually, I could just be lazy and double tap again. Oopsie, maybe not. Now I messed it up. Let me clear everything real quick. Remember to clear your screen again. You can hit shift and escape and everything will go away. Okay, so I'm going to use my shortened one because I messed it up. So 47.961. Now, obviously, if you guys are taking this as a multiple choice test question, if they have 47.962 for your answer for capital A, that's okay. You pick that one. They're not going to have 47.961 and 47.962 as an answer for a multiple choice question. They won't do that. It'll be one that's much further off. So if you're off a little bit on your decimals, it's okay. It's due to the rounding that you've had to do. All right. And then I need to do 180 minus, right? This is 147. I don't even know why I even put that in my calculator. And then I'm going to subtract that from 180. So again, let's see if this works. 180 minus my previous answer, which I can double click, or I can just hit shift and the plus sign. The ANS means it takes your last answer that you had. So angle C is going to equal 32 point, I believe it says 089, 039. And again, this is degrees. And this is my solution for everything. So I want you guys to be reminded that on your test, if this is multiple choice, you're finding one piece of information and you're checking your ABCD answer. Okay. So you'll probably only have maybe one or two answers that included that first variable that you found. Okay. By the time you find the second variable, like our capital A, most likely you'll be able to get the answer. You may not have to find all three sides. All of your questions are supposed to take less than 3 minutes. Okay, so you have to make sure you start utilizing some of the strategies that I give you, because if you don't and you just solve for the whole thing when it's multiple choice, then you're going to be wasting your time. So for the next question, I know it doesn't pop up the same as it does for you guys on your end, but for this particular question, I believe you're only asked for one specific side. Okay, so excuse me, just be cognizant of that. Don't solve the entire triangle. Solve for that one piece that it's asking for.